Alright, so in the Tale of Finn, we had just gotten to the point where they did the truce, where the Danes were promised fair treatment under the rule of Finn and his Frisians. Then they had a real gross funeral with some really graphic, uncomfortable, bloody matter, we'll just call it. So now it says that Hengist stayed. So the Danes, they couldn't do anything, or at least they felt like they couldn't, at least for the winter. They lived out that whole resentful, blood-sullen winter with Finn, homesick and helpless. No ring-whirled prow could up then and away on the sea, so they had to stay because they couldn't get back home. They didn't have a boat that could sail through this wintry water. Wind and water raged with storms, wave and shingle were shackled in ice, until another year appeared in the yard, as it does to this day, the seasons constant, the wonder of light coming over us. Oh, interesting. The light is emerging again. We talked about in the last video how light, it doesn't always bring about hope and good things. I wonder if the coming of spring will bring happiness and peace, or if it will bring war and bloodshed. Let's see. What are these pagans going to get with the springtime? So the winter was gone. Earth's lap grew lovely, so the earth is fertile. That's some personification to say the earth's lap. Longing woke in the cooped-up exile for a voyage home, but more for vengeance. Some way of bringing things to a head. His sword arm hankered to greet the Jutes. And if you remember, they're living with the Frisians, who they also hate. But the Jutes had teamed up with the Frisians, so they're just as mad at the Jutes as they are at the Frisians. And they are just itching for a fight. So he did not balk. Once Hunlafing placed on his lap Dazzle the Duel, the best sword of all, whose edge Jutes knew only too well. Thus blood was spilled. The gallant Finn, slain in his home after Guthlaf and Oslaf, back from their voyage, made old accusation. The brutal ambush, the fate they had suffered, all blamed on Finn. So, Hunlafing conspired with Hengist, and this sword is a really special sword, the best sword of all. Killed lots of Jutes, was used to kill Finn. I kind of like how they skip the action, and it's almost like in a movie where they cut away and sort of the next scene, something has happened already and you didn't get to see what unfolded. That's what happens. It's like this guy gives them a sword, they look at each other, and then cut to Finn is now bleeding out on the ground in his home. So the wildness in them had to brim over. The hall ran red with blood of enemies. Finn was cut down. The queen brought away, and everything the Shieldings, and remember the Shieldings are the Danes, and everything the Shieldings could find inside Finn's walls, the Frisian king's gold collars and gemstones, swept off to the ship. So they got a ship because Guthlaf and Oslaf came back from a voyage and decided to help the Danes get out of there. And so they, now that Finn is dead and he has no more glory, they take all his treasure, they take all his gold. There's that motif again. Over sea lanes then, back to Daneland, the warrior troop bore that lady home. And that's the end of the poem. So there's a pleasant murmur on the benches, right? Everyone's like, oh, that was nice. They're all reacting to the well-told story. Now, I believe down here, Wealhtheow is speaking again. Oh, right. This isn't after Grendel's mother. This is just after Grendel, and now Grendel's mother is going to attack. Okay. So this is way later. After Grendel's mother is killed, Here it is. So remember how the poet just talked about how Finn died? He said that Finn, tried to force these Danes to be loyal to him, and they revolted and killed him in his own house, and then they took all of his gold, which means they took all of his glory, right? Hrothgar, later, after the Grendel's mother fight, does a sermon. I mean, there's not another way to really describe it. He says, "Learn from this and understand true values. I who tell you have wintered into wisdom." So, and then he talks about power, right? So let's look at this. He says, "It is a great wonder how Almighty God in his magnificence favors our race with rank and scope and the gift of wisdom." So like we're able to climb up in social rank and get power and be kings, right? His sway is wide. Sometimes he allows the mind of a man of distinguished birth to follow its bent, grants him fulfillment and felicity on earth, and forts to command in his own country. He permits him to lord it in many lands, until the man in his unthinkingness forgets that it will ever end for him. So, even though you're allowed to be king sometimes, it's always going to end at some point. And this is the man that is unthinking. This is the man that forgets that his death is around the corner. This forgetful, unthinking man indulges his desires. Illness and old age mean nothing to him. His mind is untroubled by envy or malice, or the thought of enemies with their hate-honed swords. The whole world conforms to his will. He is kept from the worst until an element of overweening enters him and takes hold, while the soul's guard, its sentry, drowses or sleeps, grown too distracted. A killer stalks him, an archer who draws a deadly bow, and then the man is hit in the heart. The arrow flies beneath his defenses, the devious promptings of the demon start. His old possessions seem paltry to him now. He covets and resents, dishonors custom, and bestows no gold, and because of good things that the heavenly powers gave him in the past, he ignores the shape of things to come. Foreshadowing. Then finally the end arrives, when the body he was lent collapses and falls, prey to its death. Ancestral possessions and the goods he hoarded are inherited by another who lets them go with a liberal hand. O flower of warriors, beware of that trap. Choose, dear Beowulf, the better part, eternal rewards. Do not give way to pride. For a brief while your strength is in bloom, but it fades quickly, and soon there will follow illness or the sword to lay you low, or a sudden fire or surge of water, or jabbing blade, or javelin from the air, or repellent age. Your piercing eye will dim and darken, and death will arrive, dear warrior, to sweep you away. So this whole thing of this prediction of what happens to the king or to the warrior who forgets that one day he'll die. This is a great mirror to this story that we just read about Finn. Finn had a quiet winter. So he completely took for granted the resentment that was hidden, the resentment that the Danes were hiding from him. And it really comes across that in the springtime, this conspiracy and this murder or assassination was totally unpredicted. He'd had no idea this was coming. And Hrothgar would say that's why Finn was a bad king and he deserved to die. He deserved to die and have his stuff taken, because he wasn't a good enough king to remember that there's always something lurking around the corner. You always have to have your shield up. So that's one connection. The other thing that this story in particular is really cracking open for us is the theme of revenge. We noticed together how, alright, the Danes invaded Grendel's land. So Grendel attacked the Danes. So then Beowulf killed Grendel. So then Grendel's mom came back to try to hurt them. And so then Beowulf went and killed Grendel's mom. Right? And this whole story has been just a Jenga tower of revenge. Like, we can't just leave it. Like, we can't just leave it alone. We've got to hit back. We've always got to hit back. And that's what this world is like. There's no real forgiveness, and there's no lasting truce. I mean, they made a truce here, right? Like, they agreed, they shook on it, but it didn't last, because their sword arm was itching, right? So, that's a big point that this story is making, is the futility of revenge, or the cyclical nature. Like, it goes in a cycle. It's like Jormungandr, the serpent that eats its own tail. The perpetuity of the revenge cycle. So if you're interested in this culture, this war culture, and this whole might makes right, if you're strong enough to defend yourself, you can deserve to be king, but you're going to be constantly making enemies. Like, the only way to be powerful is to make enemies, right? Because you've got to, like, conquer other tribes and get tribute from them. So if the whole point of your reign is to make a bunch of enemies, it's not going to end well. Like, you're going to have a bunch of people that want revenge on you. So this sort of, model of how they kind of structure their government and stuff is a little problematic. It doesn't allow for peace. If your king is at peace, he's either not winning glory, or he doesn't know that he's about to be killed. So it reveals a lot about the culture. So yeah, hopefully, maybe you can use this. Whatever you decide your eventual paper topic is going to be, this might be something that has a lot in it that you can kind of dive into. I hope we understand it better now than the first time we read it. And if you have any further questions about it, please let me know, and we can talk more. There's a lot of cool figurative language here that you could kind of dig into. So feel free to keep the conversation going on this. But thanks for tuning in, and I hope you have a lovely weekend, and I will see you Monday or Tuesday. Bye.